Okay, so today we're doing long division of polynomials. Do you guys remember long division back in elementary school? Okay, so we're going to do a long division problem from elementary school while we are doing the long division in Algebra 2. Okay, so for instance, let's say we're dividing 5 into 372. Okay? On this, okay, the first thing, what is the first thing you do on a long division problem? Here. 5 is going to go into what? 37. And how many 5s are in 37? Okay. So we're going to stop there. Okay? In long division with Algebra 2, what you're doing is you are always looking at your first two terms. Okay? So I have x and I have x squared. How many x's? You know how we said how many 5s are in 37? Well, how many x's are in x squared? 1. Basically 1. What you're trying to do is you're trying to figure out x times what would make x squared. And it is x, right? X times x would make x squared. Now what you want to do is you want to line it up with the like term. So since I decided it was x, I'm lining it up over the x. Just like I lined the 7 up over the 37. Okay? So now at this point here, we would go 5 times 7, and what is 5 times 7? 35. Okay, so what we're doing on this one is we're going to go x times x and x times negative 4. So what is x times x? X squared. And what is x times negative 4? Negative 4x. Okay? Now going back to my problem over here, what do you do next here? We subtract, right? 5 goes into 37 7 times. We did 5 times 7, which is 35, and then you subtract, and we end up getting what left over? 2. So see how we subtracted here? What do you think we're going to do over here? But what do you do when you're subtracting two different things? You have to distribute the negative, okay? So what's going to happen is we're going to change each of these. So that's going to become a negative, and this one is going to become a positive, okay? So then we go down, and we end up with what? 5x. So notice that these all, you'll end up with one term here, just like we ended up with one term here. I'm just going to have to cancel. Oh.
They just called me from it's my SRC day, and there's a big thing I gotta. Okay. So sorry.
No problem.
We'll figure out a name.
Okay. All right. So see how we subtracted? There's something left over. We subtracted here. There's something left over. The whole purpose is to get rid of this first term. So let's recap, because some of you were like, what is going on? Okay. We have an x here, and we have an x squared. We are trying to figure out what x times what will make x squared. Okay? And we all decided that x times x makes x squared. Okay? So that's why I have that x here. Then we take this x that we chose, and we have to multiply it to both of these terms. So I went x times x, which makes x squared, and x times negative 4 makes negative 4x. But just like in long division here, you have to subtract out what you multiplied. So we subtract each of these, which makes this a negative and this a positive. Okay? These cancel. That becomes 5x. And here, what is my next thing that I do? I bring down the 2. So what am I going to do over here? Bring down the minus 17. You're only looking at your first two numbers. So again, I'm looking at this number x and this 5x. So x times what makes 5x? A positive 5 or a negative 5? A positive 5. So I'm going to write plus 5. Because it's a positive 5. If it was a negative 5, I'd write a negative 5 or a minus 5. Now I'm going to take this 5 here, and I'm going to go 5 times x, which is 5x, and 5 times negative 4, which is negative 20. What is my next step? To subtract it. And what happens when I subtract? these change signs. This becomes a negative and this becomes a positive. Okay? These cancel, and what am I left with? 3. Okay? Now, going back over to this problem, 5 goes into 22, 4. Okay, and we're saying 5 times what made 22? Well, 5 times 4 gives you close to 22, right? And that 5 times 4 is 20, and then what do? Subtract, and I'm left with 2. Now, I'm not going to do a decimal. If we're not doing decimals, do you guys remember how to write the remainder? You write it as a fraction, and it would be what? 2/5. So it'd be 74 and 2/5. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing here. Okay, it's x plus 5, and then my remainder, we're just going to put plus 3, and what have I been dividing by? X minus 4. And that right there is my answer. It is not this difficult, I promise, but it's new. And we always feel that when there's something new, that it's difficult. Okay? But we've learned that in math, what do we need to do? Practice. Okay? So guess what we're going to do?
Practice.
We're going to practice using another example. Okay? Here we go. So, I'm going to write this in long division. Okay? So we write this as x minus 5, and then our long division, and we have 3x squared minus 11x minus 26. You are always only looking at your first 2 terms, okay? So I'm looking at this x and this 3x squared. So I need to figure out what do I need to multiply this x by in order to make it 3x squared. 3x. Where do you think I'm going to line it up under? The 11. You want to keep like terms lined up together. So I'm going to put 3x here because 3x times x will make 3x squared. But you have to multiply it to each of these. So we have 3x times negative 5, which is negative 15x. And we need to remember, though, in long division, we always, after we get those answers, what do? You subtract. We distribute that negative. So this becomes a negative, and this is a positive. Okay? Because we're looking at our first 2 terms, right? And we know that 3x times x makes 3x squared, right? So then you have to take that and multiply it here and here to get these 2 terms. Okay, so now when we're subtracting, these cancel, which is what we want. If those don't cancel, you did something wrong. What do we do when you have a negative and a positive? Subtract and take the sign of the... So 15 minus 11 is positive 4x. Good, because 15 was bigger. And what is my next step? Bring down the negative 26. Okay, so now what am I looking at? Your first terms. Good. You're looking at x and 4x. So what times x will make 4x? Positive 4. So now what do I do with that positive 4? 4 times x, which is 4x, and 4 times negative 5 is negative 20. And then we subtract, which means I'm going to change each of these signs. These cancel, which is exactly what I want. Negative 26 and 20 make what? Is there anything else to bring down? No. So then I write plus, and my remainder is written as what?
Negative 6 over x minus 5.
Good. Negative 6 over x minus 5, because it's always written with your remainder divided by whatever you are dividing by. Yes, question?
Why did you put the plus in front of the negative?
You could. She asked, why did I put a plus here in front of the negative 6? I always just go plus my remainder, and so if it's a negative, I put it there. That's just how I do it. But could you just put minus 6 over x minus 5? Yes, you could do that. It's the same thing. Other questions on example 2? Okay, let's write example 3. Now, example 3 is just a little bit different. If you notice, it is missing something. Do you guys notice something that it's missing? A middle x term. Okay, when you're doing long division, you want to have place values. Okay, and so we're going to write this as long division. So I'm going to write this as x plus 1. And when I write my long division here, I'm going to do a place marker. So I have x squared plus, either you could make a blank if you want to for your x term, or you could put plus 0x because that's really nothing, and then plus 5. But you want to have a descending order. So if they're missing an x term, you want to have a 0 or a blank there so you make sure to line things up correctly. Otherwise, it'll kind of mess you up. All right, do you guys want to try this one on your own? I think that's a great idea. So I'm going to give you a minute or so to try it on your own, and then when you get the answer, show them to me on your whiteboard.
Close though, so.
Okay, I think I have the wrong answer here maybe, so. Okay, let's go ahead and do this one. So we're looking at our first two terms. We have x and x squared, right? So x times what will make x squared? X. And I'm going to line it up under my... Good. Okay, so now when I go through, x times x is?
X squared.
And x times 1 is?
X.
1x, or x. Okay, next what do I do?
Subtract.
Subtract. This is where some of you made an error. You forgot to put a negative to both of those terms. Okay, so these cancel, and 0 and negative 1x makes negative x or negative 1x. Okay, and then I bring down the plus 5. Do some of you see where you mess up now? Okay, so now we are looking at our first two terms. X times what will make negative 1x?
Negative 1.
Negative 1. So I write this as a minus 1. Because it's a negative 1, I do minus 1. Now we take negative 1 and we multiply to each of these terms. So, negative 1 times x is?
Negative 1.
Negative 1x, and negative 1 times negative 1 is?
Negative 1.
But what do I need to do now?
Add. So change sign.
We have to change two signs. So this becomes a plus and this becomes a plus. Okay? These cancel, and 5 plus 1 makes? 6. So then I write my remainder, which is x minus 1, and then I have plus 6 divided by what?
X plus 1.
X plus 1. And that is my answer. Yeah. Okay. Questions? Oh, thank you. Okay, I'm going to go and stop the video and we'll start our second part here.